All right, everyone. How's it going? How's it going? It's Ipo here, aka Rayo, and we are back with some more Gundam Assemble news. So, a while back, we had the announcement of Gundam Assemble, and there was just a really big buzz about it. And now, recently, there's been some more news. So, I thought we should kind of reconvene and take a look at all of that news again. There's a couple of things I'd like to get into. So, let's kind of get into that. First of all, please all hail the algorithm. We all know and love the algorithm. And so if you like my videos, if you like what I do here, I'm trying something new, making original content just for YouTube rather than taking clips from Twitch. Give a like and a subscribe. That means a lot to me, of course. That's how we get it moving here on YouTube. And of course, if you want to watch some builds and some fun painting streams and general silliness, you can also find me on Twitch. And again, I'll just leave the information down below. Um, and the other thing, too, is that we also hit 600 followers on Twitch as well as on YouTube. Just about 600, give or take. And that's really neat. Let's keep that train going. But yes, without further ado, let's get into the news. So the first thing that we want to get into is right there on the screen. The release is in 2026 for Gundam Assemble. And honestly, I'm a little surprised. I thought that the game would come out a little sooner, sometime in 2025. However, we're going to be getting it in 2026. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that it's going to release a year from now. And I think the main one has to do with the rules of the game, has to do with everything but the miniatures. Because when it comes to models, when it comes to miniatures, we all know that Bandai have that on lockdown. They're very, very good at that. So I suspect that it's everything else, including the rule set, trying to make a satisfying game that's actually going to last and be fun to play. All of that, I think, is going to be in development over these next several months to a year to really lock that down and make it something that's more than just an excuse to buy really cool miniatures. Although that being said, I think there's a number of folks out there that are more than happy to just pick up the game and throw away the rules and just have cool miniatures. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of people in the tabletop miniature hobby that just love the miniatures. There's nothing wrong with that. But if they really want to have something that lasts, yeah, having good rules. And the other thing too that I was thinking about was something to do with like the community support and like local support. If you think about Magic the Gathering, if you think about Warhammer or HeroClix, Pokemon, those are all games that have like a really good local support in terms of weekly tournaments, prize support, all of those things make it so that there's a community that is built up around a game and that can, again, sort of last for a long time rather than being just a flash in a pan. So maybe that could be something that they're looking into as well with Gundam Assemble. Who knows? But again, I just kind of go back to this idea that for it to come out in 2026, when they've shown a bunch of miniatures already, and certainly Bandai, they're no slouch when it comes to making really, really good model kits and obviously Gundams and robots. So that's something to think about. And we will get back to some more news about Gundam Assemble regarding an interview, actually, a recent interview. But before we get to that, let's take a look at some more pictures. So once again, release date 2026. Recently, there was, as the time of this recording, there's a Gundam Next Future Pavilion, kind of like a festival for all things Gundam in Shinjuku, Tokyo, Japan. And there was a lot of news about all things Gundam, not just Assemble, but regarding strictly Assemble for now. We do have some pictures coming from officially the Gundam Twitter account, as well as some folks like Gundam Pixel on Blue Sky, and some other folks on Twitter. So we will get all of those names posted in the comments below or in the information below. But let's take a look at some of this stuff here. So we saw a setup very much like this at another event that happened in Florida, I believe. It's sort of a diorama setup with the models. And again, I don't really think this is suggesting anything about how the game is played. It's more just to give you a sense, that feeling of the game that happens in your mind, maybe. But it looks cool. And actually, specifically about having a more diorama, physical terrain setup, there is a little bit about that we can talk about later. So put a pin in that. So this is actually a much better look at the battlefield, and we see some cards. We see the hexagonal grid-based map, much like BattleTech. The models are on the field. There are kind of markers and indicators printed on the map itself, I believe. And then there's some dice. There's some better pictures of the cards, because I think that's kind of worth talking about. So we'll take a look at that soon. And here is a look at the card game. It's a little hard to see, so let's try and zoom in a bit. So here's the card game that's also coming out soon. And the artifact models are used as a kind of token to represent your card here. There is actually a kind of bundle that's coming out with cards, as well as a couple of artifact miniatures. I believe that those have all sold out. As far as pre-orders go, I think those have all sold out, and I kind of missed my chance. But again, this is kind of leaning more towards the card game side. I don't really think there's any sort of rules interaction between having like the models and the card game, or anything regarding like Gundam Assemble. It's really just a token, a physical representation of the card. It's cool, and it's the fastest way to get the miniatures, I believe. And here again, we have a much better look at the at a miniature on a TCG card. It looks a little silly. It's doing the classic gun cannon pose. But there it is. It's kind of funny, actually. Yeah, so here we have the cards. It's a really good look at how this game is going to play. We can kind of figure out some aspects of this game. So if you look at the top left corner of the card, let's just start there. It has the HP, which is set to 11, and that looks to be a kind of dial, a kind of turning dial, which will tick down as you take damage, so you don't have to track it with dice or like a separate piece of paper or anything like that. That's pretty neat. And so right beside that, it says Timeline 2, Threat 6. So again, I don't really know regarding how that all works. What does Timeline or Threat 6 indicate? Can only really speculate, but I'm sure that we'll find out the rules soon. And then here, if we kind of go further, on that top bar there, it says middle range, and it's in yellow. And then we have these little pieces of paper, these kinds of cards that sort of clip onto the data sheet there. The first one says energy, and then the second one says status effect. So that's really interesting too. Perhaps those little tabs, kind of, you either take them off or place them on so that you can sort of track how much energy you're using. And then likewise, the status effect, perhaps if it's like, if you're in a shocked state and you're immobile or something, you can put a little tab there too. So that's kind of interesting. And then if we go below, there's the two attacks, beam saber and beam rifle, and we can look pretty nice detail here. Look at some of those details. It says TL cost, which again I would imagine says timeline, represents timeline. Range 1, Strength 3 for the Beam Saber. This attack ignores shield. Critical, this unit or another friendly unit within range 3 becomes encouraged. So there's a type of buff that occurs when the Beam Saber attack is used. And then for Beam Rifle, timeline cost 4, range 3, strength 5. And then there's more details like adaptive combat systems, which is a passive. When this unit defeats an enemy unit within threat 3 or greater, give a strength +1 counter on this unit. And again, there's more details there. There's actually some keywords as well. It says Amuro Ray, Earth Federation, new type. All of those look like good pieces of information to have regarding like perhaps making a unit, making a team, making a force. You might need to consider the types of keywords that are used, or maybe there's like keyword synergies with passives and attacks and stuff. So that's kind of interesting. And then these are smaller cards. So let's take a look at that. These are much smaller cards that imagine that you draw from a deck. And there's All Out Assault, Precognition, Comrades in Arms. And we can take a good look at Comrades in Arms. It says your active unit gets strength +1 and an additional strength +1 this turn for each other friendly unit within range 3. And perhaps it's a keyword there, command. All of these are command cards. So once again, these are tweets from Swamp Build, who is attending the Gundam Next Future Festival Pavilion, and just took some really nice pictures of the miniatures that are on display there. And it sounds like they've kind of approached the miniatures in a different style and a different technique for each one. And I do have some pictures, so let's take a look. Well, here we have here we have the two balls. Very, very nice. It's a lot of debris there, but I like that. They're going to be extremely tiny, but I'm absolutely going to add them to my ball collection. And so here's the gym with like an effects kind of like motion attack to the beam saber, and then there's light kind of casting on the arm itself. Very cool. And these are pretty zoomed in. So here is two Zakus. There's Char Zaku and a Jim. Yeah, and I think that the painting's quite nice for these, the ones that they had on display. They look great. And here's the RX-78-2, again with like this slashing motion effect on the blade. Pretty cool. And this is really nice, the Strike Freedom, I think, with some metallic gold and a really cool pose. And this model, again, they're miniatures, and I believe that they've said they're just about 2 inches tall. But this one seems exceptionally taller just because it's on a flight stand and it's got all these extra stuff on the backpack. So it's going to be actually quite impressive on the battlefield, I think. So again, these are all pictures that have been coming out recently from an event happening in Japan, but we do have some other news to get into, and let's kind of get into that right now. So there is a bit more news regarding Gundam Assemble that I'd like to get into. Polygon and Charlie Hall from Polygon did an interview with Bandai on the 14th, so on Valentine's Day. What better day to talk about playing with little robot miniatures? So yeah, let's get into this article. Here it says, the game that Bandai shows off in their trailer looks to have a similar footprint to card-based skirmish miniatures like Warhammer Underworlds. Representatives from Bandai told Polygon that the smaller footprint was indeed inspired by games like these, but also more traditional board games like Catan. They clearly want Gundam Assemble to fit on a kitchen table, not the lunchroom-sized 8-footers that wargames like 40K are usually played on. So let's continue and just try and find the sort of interesting points here. Gundam Assemble is a tabletop strategy game where players use miniature Gunpla figures to create armies and engage in tactical battles, said Tatsuro Kawashima, who built the mechanical system that the game is based on. The core gameplay is focusing on the strategic unit placement, actually playing these objective-based missions. So it is designed to appeal to both hardcore miniature gamers and the casual fan of the Gundam franchise. The game draws inspiration from miniature games like 40K, Battletech, and Star Wars Shatterpoint. Yes, new and seasoned players of those types of games. They will then use that team to play through a story-driven campaign with objectives linking individual missions. That's really cool. So they're not really... You can play them like just as like isolated little games, but it sounds like you can get into like a full-on campaign where you're going to string together several battles. That sounds fun. And then this is interesting too because they specifically point out Battletech. I think it's most similar to Battletech, ellipses, but so far it's a little bit difficult to share the details, says Kawashima. The basic concept is to play a big team featuring your favorite mobile suits. However, since this is a game based on Gundam IP, we also want to offer special scenarios, limited battles that evoke the original storyline to help the player to feel connected to the source material. So again, it's interesting that they are specifically citing Battletech because I think that a lot of people kind of spotted that almost immediately, that it very much seemed to be drawing from Battletech. So there it is, specifically from Bandai themselves, that they looked at that. Oh, and this is interesting too. As far as terrain or other accessories, Bandai has not yet finalized what will come with Gundam Assemble. The final product will likely include the game board, dice, and cards that show the details of each unit in game and in fiction, like the height, blah blah blah. While hex-based movement is integral to the game at this time, Bandai has said that it hasn't ruled out other gameplay modes that use rulers or other tools to allow units to move more freely. This means that massed battles of Gunpla could be on the horizon, but for now, at least, the company is laser focused on the smaller footprint game. So, if I'm interpreting that correctly, it does sound like to the earlier image where they showed this kind of like more scenic terrain, physical terrain battlefield, that is not a part of the game at present, but it could very well become something in the future. Ultimately, comments like that, we can't really rely too much on that. Do you know what I mean? It's the kind of comment that is hedging your bets. If the game becomes a big hit and there's a really strong demand for that type of game play, then they might develop in the future. But again, keeping in mind that this is like a year away already, I would imagine that they're kind of focusing on the game as it's currently being presented, right? For the designers at Bandai, it was particularly important to translate the intricate detail of their large, elaborate models to the smaller size of a miniature. That meant actually making them a bit bigger than traditional 28mm or 32mm scale models. At 5 centimeters, which is roughly 2 inches tall, each Gundam miniature will tower over the traditional 40K assault intercessor, and will even have a bit of reach on a captain in Gravis armor. So they're saying that they're going to be somewhere along the lines of like a Primera Space Marine, it sounds like, give or take. So that's kind of interesting. And they're also highly detailed. They go on to say that the models are based on high-grade kits. And this is from Jun Somiya from the Gundam Assemble planning and development staff. In order to efficiently create cool poses with a small number of parts, the angle of the arms has been carefully adjusted. For parts that would not otherwise be visible, they were purposefully omitted or molded in place. So again, that's something that you see often in the world of miniatures. They're going to sort of render the parts that you're going to see in a final fixed pose. With Gundam, you need to consider all the details from all the angles because it's a fully posable model. So someone might pose them in, extreme positions, and in those extreme positions, you'll need to have details on the underside of the arm, the armpit, so on and so forth, the inside of the cape, the back, and those aren't really too much of a concern in a fixed pose model. We thought the size would satisfy customers who display their individual miniatures. Also, the size would be perfect for painting Gundams, which have very small faces and armor plates. Maybe it would be bigger than other products, but we felt that 5 centimeters would be perfect for those purposes. More information on Gundam soon. Early figures will be sold in special bundles, which I talked about, which Bandai confirmed is a completely separate product. So again, a lot of good news, a lot of good information here from Charlie Hall, from Polygon, and a lot of news in general from Gundam Artifact. I am interested. It's at the very least we're getting really cool miniature models to paint, but it'll be neat if it's a fun game that we can really get into. So when there's more news, if y'all find this interesting, we can talk about it as it comes out. And once again, thanks for your time. Thanks for checking out the video. Please like and subscribe and all that algorithm jazz. And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.